certain place. When he finished, one of his disciples said to him, "Sovereign, teach us to pray just as John taught his disciples." Jesus said unto them, "When you pray, pray like this. Abba, holy is your name. Let your realm come. Give us each day our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, for we also forgive everyone who sins against us. And lead us not into temptation." Then Jesus said unto them, "Suppose you have a friend, and you go to him at midnight and say, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread.' A friend of mine on the journey has come to me, and I have no food to offer. And suppose the one inside answers, 'Don't bother me. The door is already locked, and my children and I are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything.' I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of friendship, yet because of your shameless audacity, your friend will surely get up and give you as much as you need. So I say to you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And the one who knocks, the door will be opened."
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Peace. Let it begin with me. When Rev Brenda told me to talk about peace, I actually said yes, even if I didn't know where to start, because you don't say no, Rev Brenda. I didn't know how to start, so Mom had me look up the meaning of peace in dictionary.com. Peace, the dictionary said, is a state of mutual harmony between people. I know there is no such peace in the world right now because there are wars and misunderstandings between countries, between nations, between people. In the gathering thought, peace is not a factor of what's going on around us. For now, I think I'll let you, the adults, worry about that part. Then, there is a peace the dictionary says where the mind is free from anxiety and trouble. I think I have that kind of peace. I wake up and I don't worry if I have food to eat. I wake up knowing that even if it's 100 degrees outside, we have air conditioning at the house. I have no serious worries because I know I have my dad and mom, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, my ate, Rev Brenda, and all of you to keep me away from trouble. Then I googled peace for the Christian, and the best one we found was that personal peace with God is finding Him at rest in our hearts and in our minds. This was a little hard for me to fully understand. So Mom asked me, when was the last time I felt something so deep it made me experience God? I just have to share with you what happened in Pilgrim Pines during this camp. The juniors were in charge for Wednesday vespers. This boy named Eric stood up and shared about forgiveness. He was maybe 10 or 11 years old, a year younger than me. I am not in the same cabin because I was in the junior high group. He said it was really hard growing up because his real dad kept him in a cage, fed him dog food, and abused him. It was so hard to believe his story. Did these things really happen? But then he showed us his scars. It must have been hard for him to share that because while he talked, he sighed a lot, sighed and looked down at his feet. And then without knowing it, my hand curled up in 2 fists. I started to get so mad at his dad just thinking about it. How could he? Really, how could he? Where was God at that time? But then, I also started feeling so guilty that I happened to have a nice dad. I didn't know what to do, but I felt I had to do something. I felt so sad and so sorry for Aaron. I just had to go to him and give him a hug. Although we were not supposed to stand up and interrupt him, I couldn't help it. I didn't care anymore, I just had to. I gave him a hug and he started sobbing. Man, I couldn't keep my cool, I started sobbing too. I wanted to take him home with me and introduce him to my family, to this church, to let him know that there are still a lot of nice people. I want him to know that he is loved. He said he has forgiven his real dad, who's in jail now, and he is happy because his foster dad is really nice. I really hope and pray he has that inner peace that a lot of Christians talk about, because it would take forever for me to forgive my dad if he did that to me. Even our dogs are not in cages and are free to roam our yard. That day, I questioned God. and that day I felt His peace and His love. Isn't that weird? Thank you, everyone. Miss Joanne for sending me to camp, for letting me experience God in a very real way. Mother Teresa said, peace begins with a smile. Peace, let it begin with me. Let it begin with a hug.
It was about 7:15 on Friday when I got that text. 20 minutes later or so, when I stopped crying, I made a copy, and I was on the freeway headed towards Joanne's house, because Joanne, I knew, wasn't going to be here today. The reflection, the story, the event that Anson shared belongs to more than just Joanne. Belongs to every one of you who buy those script cards and then use that for groceries and things during the week. There are a number of people in the community that have never been to this church, but they know about the program of sending youth to camp, and so she's going to copy your reflection for them too. Because we all need to hear these kinds of stories, and we all need to recognize how important a safe place is. Not just a place where you're not going to be judged or condemned or beaten, but a place where you are valued, and a place where you can spend a number of years and decide that this is a place that you want to share with your friends. So the little boy Aaron got a hug in the middle of Vespers, because here, Anson has taken values that he's learned in his family, learned in those people that love him and have loved him from first breath, taken your values, shared them, and then shared them in a much bigger place, in a much bigger way. As I read and reread Anson's reflection, I thought of it over the rest of this weekend. It's been a part of every single experience since then, in a way that I wouldn't even be able to articulate. But inviting people into our home, our faith home, is an important thing. Right behind that invitation then is making a space and a place. We do the prayer that Jesus taught, or the Lord's Prayer, whatever you want to call it. We do that every single week, as do so many other Christian traditions. We have imagined, after 2,000 years of stylizing worship, we have imagined that those exact words in the King James English are exactly the required way to pray. But if you look at that in your bulletin, Jesus said, pray like this. For a number of years, scholars thought that the word that Jesus used in addressing God was Abba, because that's the Hebrew word for daddy, not father, but daddy. And it's important to make that distinction because Jesus is setting out a relationship piece. Pray like this. Well, in the last 100 years, language scholars have uncovered and decided it wasn't Abba that Jesus said, but it was simply Ah! And they liken that to the cry of a newborn needing something from their caretaker, whether it's mom or dad or a wet nurse or a dry nurse or whoever. It's the cry of an innocent, helpless, but not hopeless individual. So if we prayed like an infant who makes noise, wanting somebody to come change my diaper, somebody to fill this hunger in my soul, somebody to get me untangled from these sheets, if we approached God that way, what do you imagine might change for you? And please let me be clear, this is not about you can never again say, Our Father who art in heaven. You can call God Edith if you want. Or George. You can call God whatever name it is that fits from your heart. Because what's the most important is your relationship. And there's not a single thing that any of us need to do other than be open. In 2,000 years of cleaning up and stylizing worship, and for those of you that grew and maybe still attend a much more liturgical kind of worship, the idea of getting up during Vespers and walking across to hug somebody just wouldn't happen. It should happen. The relationship that Jesus models for us with each other and with God is a relationship of absolute trust and love and intention. For those of you that are parents, I can't even imagine the feeling that you had the first time you held that first baby that you gave birth to or caused to be birthed. I don't have any context for getting that. But I do have a context for when a little 4.5-year-old boy calls me Brenda. I do have a context for when a little 2.5-year-old Petunia runs across the parking lot to hug me. So I know a little bit about, And I know exactly what it feels like to get a text from an 11-year-old boy man whose words impact and change everything for the next, I don't know how many days. There are people that each of us come in contact every week that need to know there's somebody who will listen to them and respond. Terry said I was talking too quiet. I got a new set of hearing aids and it sounds to me like right now I'm yelling. But when I was sitting waiting for this, what do they call it, equipment technician to adjust me, this woman came in and she sat down and she just grinning and she just bouncing, great big old girl with a cane, trying to manage all of her stuff, and she sat down and she smiled and I smiled back, and I think she said, "How are you today?" That's what I answered anyway, regardless of what she said. I said, "I'm doing well, I'm doing well. How about you?" And she said, "Do you really want to know? Or do you want the short version?" I really want to know. I wasn't going anywhere, sort of like this morning. And I realized that it's that thing that we all fall into. "Hi, how you doing, Karen?" Before Karen even says anything. "Good morning, Eileen, how you doing?" Before she says anything. This is a church, and so here, in this room, we can model that difference. We can model what Anson just shared with us. We can be the people that follow Jesus. During August, we'll take this prayer that Jesus taught and we'll look at it in about 6 different ways. Some of them are going to be exciting and different, and others will just be the same old. But maybe together we can find something different about prayer in August. In the same way that I hope you've got a glimpse of peace in a little bit different way for the month of July. But for today, prayer, the prayer that Jesus taught, is all about relationship. So let your handshake, your hug, your smile, let it all be about peace. Let peace be in this world. Let it start with us.